Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Gridslot Gavra Racing podcast. You're joined by Tucson 028, myself,
Me, Tiger Assassin.
And me, X-Nanny G.
and this week we are kicking things straight off once again with some more Project Cars 2 action. So we had 2 races from Project Cars 2 this week. I think they were both quite interesting to watch from a fan perspective, but we are going to kick things off straight away then with the Ferrari 333 SP race. Again, in future, I really hope that we can change that title.
Tongue twister.
Yes, it is. Should we call it the Ferrari Tongue Twister Championship? That's what we're going to call it from now on the podcast. So, from practice, you knew it was going to be a close race with the top 4 all in the same second. This actually continued over to qualifying, where faster A14. Oh, sorry, just got a bit of thunder on my end here in the UK. As faster A14 took pole by 0.03 of a second, with all of the top 4 cars in the same 0.8 of a second. Actually, is really close in qualifying. But for the race start, it went all wrong for Faster off the start there. He had a horrible start in the wet conditions, dropped to, I believe it was about 4th or 5th place before we got to turn 1. Faster as well. It was up to 7th place even, just looking at my notes here. Allo Champs had to go off the track to avoid the slow starting Faster, and then he had a slow starting Faster, sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? Then he had a half spin at turn 1, falling to the back of the field completely, and then going down the main straight at Fuji. The duration was at Fuji, so I didn't mention that earlier. Aguilera, Manic, and ID4 did go 3 wide down the main straight before there was an absolutely massive crash, as Tiger just put it when he was reacting to this a few minutes before the podcast. And speaking of which, how did you see that incident, mate?
It was a big crash. There was damage everywhere, and it was a bit of an unreasonable move, really, as he went sort of careering into the right hand side of the car, and then they both went into the wall, both damaged there to both cars. But you got to be careful. You don't really know too much on what's happening on the driver's end, in terms of how they see the incident. But the driver could have lost the front end maybe, or the back end. But it's interesting because he just swerves into the side of him and pushes him into the wall there of. I can't remember who the guy is that.
It was Manic who went off.
Manic,
and had
yes.
terminal damage.
Aguilera just pushes Manic straight into the wall, and then both of them come out with damage. Yes, so it was very interesting indeed. Bit weird why that happened. Maybe a bit more space should have been given. He had a whole track, really. To be fair.
Yeah, I think that he did definitely need to give Manic a bit more room on the outside there. You can't just move across another driver when they are probably still there after you've been going down the straight that long, especially in cars that are quite equally matched. As you having a couple of problems there, Natty, or are you all good?
Yeah, the weather's a bit. I'm moving around. I hope my mic's all right.
Right, cool. So if we lose X-Natty at some point, you know why. The show must go on. We leave the man in the field. We're having bad weather in real life at the moment. There was bad weather at Fuji last Tuesday or yesterday, whenever it was. We saw many cars taking different lines, trying to go through the puddles and that to try and keep their wet tires in as close condition as always. I think Project Cars 2 may be one of the, well, for me, my own experience, is easier to drive in the wet than most other games. The only thing that makes it really challenging on Project Cars 2 is the puddles that appear around the track. So obviously when you go through a puddle on like your tires, you're just going to start aquaplaning across the track.
Yeah, which makes things be very dangerous.
Yeah, and that makes things really, really difficult to do. Yeah. So big props to all of the drivers who managed to complete the race. I think we had 10 finishes out of 11 starts, if I can get my words out. And yeah, that was nice to see all those different lines and stuff like that we saw during the race. Anyway, as the race progressed, as Jukebox predicted up in the commentary box, so nice from him, we had rain for about the first half hour of the race before it started to dry out. That did mean that we saw a lot of drivers having to pit and make a crucial pit stop and decide to go onto the slick tyres. And later on in the race, we saw the rain come back, actually, which meant they had to pit for the wet tyres again. So as a driver yourself, Natty, how important is it to get that call right between the slicks and the wets?
Yeah, it's a really tough call that the drivers have to make between the wets and the dries, because you don't want to pit too early and lose so much time on slick tyres, because the track will still obviously be wet and slippery, but then you don't want to be stuck out there overheating wet tyres on a dry track. So it's really, really important to try and find the changeover point between the wets and the dries, which I think most drivers, I think, found the correct time. So it's so yeah, it can be quite tricky sometimes.
All right, thanks for the insight. As later on in the race, we did see Red 15, sorry, and his teammate ESR Chef come together. Well, not come together, but ESR Chef seemed to let Red 15 go through there without too much hassle. Do you think that was team orders from those two, Tiger?
Yeah, it was team orders. Not really much more to say. It's just you can see just he clearly moves over to the side. He lets them get down the racing line, down in the clean part of the track, and just and it's team orders. But from what we've seen in these team races, which is obviously we'll talk about a bit later with the Golden Crown, but team orders are always first. But some people don't like to stick to team orders there, so it was good to see that the team orders came into play during that race.
I was actually quite surprised that ESR was so courteous to his teammate there, despite him being ahead of Red 15 in the championship standings at the moment. They don't have that many races left to go, and also in that championship.
It depends really on how the drivers feel, because some drivers are it depends on how the team is, and two, how the drivers feel, and what obviously as you said about the championship standings. So and that's the same for any racing sport in real life as well. But it has a lot of factors come into team orders.
Definitely. As we had Red 15 and Allo Champs actually going wheel to wheel into turn one. That happened a lot, actually. Those two really went at it for the lead of the race. As in, like, the last 37 minutes, the rain came back after a dry spell that had lasted for about an hour, which meant that many drivers once again had to make that critical decision to come into the pits for wet tyres, or try and do a Glock and stay out on the slicks. As I think Allo Champs did try to do that. I think he did, but didn't quite work for him. But he did pit for the wet tyres in the end, and with 8 minutes to go after an insane battle between Allo Champs and Red, which was just so tense to watch, Allo Champs did manage to get a nice clean move around the outside into turn one, bringing the defense of the lead to an end while those two were battling. However, it did allow faster underscore A14 to be lapping 2 seconds a lap faster at some points than the leaders, and then that actually led to a final lap battle between Faster and Red for second place. I'm not going to go too much into the details because I want you to watch the race to see what happened. I'm not going to tell you the outcome either, but it was a second place. So if you want to go and see the outcome of that race, please go to the YouTube channel. It is on there. It was uploaded yesterday, I believe it was. And you can go and see that. But anyway, the second race from the Project Cars 2 realm was the Renault Megane Trophy, which took place at Austria, the Österreich Ring, Red Bull Ring, whatever you want to call it, in
the ring,
the
track.
ring, that track in Austria with a massive bull statue.
Yeah.
So that took place this week also. Javier Rands took a second pole position in a row, although it wasn't quite as dominant this time, only 3 tenths ahead of Aguileta and Becerra, but that did complete an all-Spanish 1-2-3 in the grid position.
It's
so, if you are a Spanish fan of Gavra Racing, it looks like your boys are doing well in the Renault Megane Trophy so far. As from the start, it was relatively clean from the people at the front, but there was absolute chaos behind. There were multiple crashes. I remember seeing King Quinn, who had a little incident with the driver going onto the grass into the barrier. I don't think he got damage that was race ending, but he did sustain some damage there. And also GTS was spun round by one of the yellow Renault. There's that word again from last week. I believe that. I don't think it was
Renault.
I think it was Toby's teammate, but I'm not 100% sure. I think there was a replacement in for the race that happened last week at the time of recording, but the course of the past week. But anyway, continuing on in the early stages of the race, Giulio completed a double overtake at the turn 3 hairpin despite the damage he had sustained before from an early incident. What did you make of that incident, Natty?
Yeah, it was a really good overtake. Firstly, you're going down the inside of one, but then much more later, much more confident on the brakes, and was able to get the roof down the inside. And I noticed he actually had quite a bit of damage, so it's good to. It was a good overtake for the damage that he sustained early in the race. So it's a really good clean move.
And that damage actually came from a lap one incident between Betsera and its Julia. How did you see that crash, Tiger?
It was the same as really, but it was quite similar to the incident we spoke about earlier in the Ferrari race. Just two cars coming together, one car deciding to push the limits and push the other car to the limits of the track, and both of them just lose it straight into the wall. But once again, could have given a lot more space on that straight and didn't need to push the car to the limit, especially when there was room on the inside as well, and there wasn't really too much of a threat on the inside, maybe trying to defend the line to maybe cover cars, but as I said, it's difficult, especially if you're not in that driver's seat. But still a lot more room could have been given down that straight once again.
Yeah, I think, well, we can all say things of hindsight, but I guess when you're in that situation, you have to make a split-second decision and then try and deal with the consequences best you can. But that did result in a lot of aero damage there for Julia. Lost his front and rear bumpers, which caused him to obviously lose a lot of aerodynamic performance. I mean, he had another spin by himself, just almost in a straight line, it seemed like, in the run from turns 8 to 9, just that little downhill section there. As an Aguilera later on in the race pulled off a nice move on Cypher 9 for 8, managed to get down the inside into the first corner. Aguilera then had more of a, well, not incident-packed race, but a bit more of an exciting race when he also had a massive save, actually, later on in the race with I believe it was about 20 minutes to go, 20 minutes, something like that, 20 minutes to go. As Kraser also made a move on Quinn, but there was contact between the two, meaning that Quinn lost 2 places. From my perspective, watching the stream back, it looked like Kraser maybe could have left a little bit more space for Quinn, but at the same time, Quinn wasn't really in a position where he was entitled to much more room on the outside rather than Kraser could have given him. There wasn't much that either driver could do. Anyway, there was no real damage caused by the incident, so I think it will go down as a racing incident. Or at least that's what it should be in my mind anyway. Quinn also went wheel to wheel with Kraser again, and there was a crash into turn 8 as Kraser spun after contact with Aguilera. So that was an interesting one. As whilst that was going on, what I noticed is that a lot of drivers seem to be having problems with traction and rear downforce. It seemed like a lot of drivers were spinning by themselves and losing the car out of slow speed traction zones and stuff like that. So maybe for the future, drivers with their setup will want to be putting more downforce on the rear wing. Aguilera also went off, which allowed Quinn through in the closing stages of the race, and then Aguilera spun by himself at turn 8. Once again, turn 8 seeming to claim many a victim in the Renault Megane series race. Quinn also spun at the turn 3 hairpin, leaving Aguilera nowhere to go, which caused caused big damage for the car behind. But after all of that action, it was Javier Rand who took his second win in a row in the Renault Megane Trophy, extending his championship lead once again with nearly a 30-second margin to second place. So well done to him. And that brings to an end the Project Cars 2 stuff that happened this week. We're going to go straight on to GT Sport now, and I'm going to hand over to your lead commentators from that, Natty G.
So yeah, we had round 5 of the GT Sport League, which was at Monza, but we had no chicane for that race. So all the drivers going straight over the chicane that's known as normally turn 1 and 2, but now we just went straight over that, and which we saw many overtakes actually into turn 1. But just like last week, we're going to start with qualifying, and for the second time in a row, Play Dutchy took pole position by 4/10 this time. However, during the 12-minute qualifying session, we saw actually quite a few battles on for track position, similar to what we saw in the real F1 race, with drivers using the slipstream of the other drivers in front to gain the advantage on the straights. And I think, Tiger, did you have any tactics in qualifying that you'd like to share?
But yeah, I knew that in qualifying slipstream was going to be key. Doing practicing slipstream in the first sector, you'd make up about 7/10 if you didn't have that slipstream in that first sector, which is big margin. So we knew that slipstream for that race was going to be key. So I came out a bit later because we were trying to sort the stream out, as you can remember, but came out a little bit later. And then I did a lap, put a bank lap in, came back in, and then I waited for the rest of the group to come back out, and then I went back out again to try and get that slipstream, and that's what helped me and got my fourth position.
And yeah, so following on from that, you've had a good qualifying in fourth place, which set you up for a good race. And at some parts of the race, we saw you gaining on the battle for the lead. But do you think you could have challenged for more of the podium positions?
Yeah, I could have maybe. It was difficult on that first lap, those first couple of laps especially. Toussaint and Dutchy and Duke all battling out there. Such clean racing between all three of them, and I was reluctant to get involved if I was honest. I got quite close behind. I think I was 7/10 behind them at one point, and I could have maybe looked for a move, maybe somewhere down the inside. I could have maybe gone down the inside of play Dutchy, but I just had to leave that room then. I knew those cars were going to be quicker than me, so I thought I'd hand back and try and get the jump on them at the pit stops. And yeah, I could have done maybe a little bit better with that strategy as well. But, fourth place finish, and, I'll take that and go on to the next race.
Yeah, it was a good race from you. And at the start of the race, we saw using the slipstream of Play Dutchy to make the move into turn one. And also we saw Duke making the move into turn two. So, Toussaint, do you think it was difficult to try and break the slipstream once you got ahead of those guys?
Yeah, sorry, I just had a massive lightning strike right next to
in the background.
Literally right next to my house.
God heavens. It's lovely and sunny up here.
We should move to the north of England, Matty. Yeah, it was more or less impossible to break the slipstream, really. I was trying to do my best. We ended up going 3 wide at one point. But I knew at the beginning of the race it was important for me to get past Dutchy and into the lead, because that just wanted to stop him from, cruising off into the distance again like he did in Belgium. I managed to get him around the outside, luckily. But yeah, it was just a little bit too quick in the second part of the race. But yeah, I think we're getting on to that in a sec.
Yeah, I was just going to say, throughout the race, we saw you three battling constantly for the lead. What was it like, just constantly battling with for the podium and for the race win?
A little bit frustrating that I couldn't win it in the end. I was a bit upset with myself after the race. Thought I hadn't done well enough. But I think Duke kind of doomed his own race a little bit by pitting earlier, because with that extra fuel load, you're just so much slower than the cars who were able to continue on the lower fuel. Then Dutch actually managed to pull about 2 laps on me. I think he was saving fuel behind us though when we were battling, because when you saw he wasn't really going for many overtaking maneuvers, not like swapping and changing as much as me and Duke were down each of the overtaking spots on the track. I think you saw that maybe the Mercedes that we were both driving was a little bit quicker in a straight line than the BMW that he was in, even with a balance of performance on. But yeah, I think it was a fun battle. I mean, we went 3 wide. If you've seen it from my personal POV and my personal YouTube, it is quite something. I mean, because I remember just thinking, I'm not backing out of this. The other two are backing out of this, but I am not backing out of Curva Grande when we're going 3 wide. So I'm happy that we could give all of you some entertainment, at least in the beginning of the race.
Yeah, it's really fun to watch, especially from the commentator's perspective. But unfortunately, we did see a few drivers crash out of the race, and most of them being at Ascari in the second sector. On the opening laps, Woody and Phoenix Gamer were going side by side through the corner. However, there was a little bit of contact between the two drivers to cause Woody to go off into the gravel and into the barriers. But luckily, there was no major damage, and he was able to carry on with his race. And later on in the race, I believe it was I think there was 20 minutes to go, and another driver who lost the rear of his car was Tobster. Tobster in the Honda NXR went onto the AstroTurf, losing the rear, and then unfortunately went off into the barrier. And I believe he wasn't as lucky as Wood, and I believe he got real right damage, I think. I can't quite remember. But another driver, GJ, who has had quite an unlucky start to the championship, you could say. He was involved in an incident last week at Spa, and I think he was involved in a Turn 1 incident at the Red Bull Ring as well. So He's had an unlucky start to his championship, but he was another driver who was a victim into the Ascari corner, and he was going side by side with Frozer, but I believe Toussaint could give us his opinion on the crash.
Yeah, so the GJ and Frozer incident is a bit of a tough one. I think the game didn't give us the best angle to watch the incident from, but what it looked like from when I watched the stream back was like, well, they were touching all the way down the straight, really up into Ascari. Ascari's like a tricky corner in a car that has a lot of downforce. Never mind, GT3 cars. So they were bagging wheels all the way down the straight, door to door stuff, and it looked like GJ had possibly got it around the outside, but Frozer just tagged the rear left of the Subaru, and GJ actually caught it. So he caught the initial oversteer from the impact of Frozer hitting him, but then he overcorrected a little bit on the curb, and that spun him out. The same thing happened in Spa. So whether or not that's just an imbalance of the Subaru potentially in some of the higher speed corners, or whether that's just how there's a driver error by GJ. I mean, only he can give us an answer to that. I haven't actually driven the Subaru in Gran Turismo Sport, but yeah, so it looked like the Subaru just snapped on him again once he caught it, and that sent him off. But I think if you were gonna apportion blame, I'd say it would have to go on Frozer. GJ, you can see from the stream, he doesn't turn into the apex of the corner, at least from the perspective the stream gives you. He gives Frozer enough space. I think Frozer outbroke himself and went into GJ, causing the Subaru to go into the gravel.
So thanks for your opinion. And if you haven't watched the race, I'd recommend it. It's probably one of the best races we've had so far. I think maybe Austria is also up there with one of the top races of the season. But if you haven't watched it, a little bit of a spoiler alert. So you might want to skip a few seconds ahead if you don't want to know the results. But
skip to the X1 section.
Play Dutchy got himself his second win in a row, and yourself, Toussaint and Duke, finishing on the podium. And in terms of the championship, it's looking really close at the top, between the top three, with Duke leading the way on 116 points, followed by Toussaint on 106, and Jojo Power close behind on 105. So after 5 races, it's definitely getting a little bit interesting at the top. But there was also a last lap dive bomb on Oriole from Simmerberg. So what do you think? What's your opinion on that, Tiger?
Yeah, you could clearly see from Simmerberg it was just a last ditch attempt to see if he could get anything out of that last corner. But yeah, you got to be careful. I mean, you can go for those kind of moves, but you got to be careful that if you're going to go for them, you do it safely and correctly, and you don't cause damage to the car. There was a bit of damage involved, I believe, but there wasn't anything big, like in terms of them spinning out or in terms of getting terminal damage. But no, it was. You could see it was just a last-ditch attempt to try and get around Oriole before they came around to the start-finish line. But yeah, it was just I've seen drivers do it before. It's just you got to do it safely and correctly, and you can do it. But sometimes when you're too far, if you're too far back in a braking zone, you just have to accept that. You're not going to get that position.
Yeah, and obviously with the slipstream, he would have been rapidly gaining on the Mercedes driver, but obviously, he was. In my opinion, he was a bit too far back to go for the move.
Yeah, definitely.
But with the incident, I don't believe they changed position. I believe Oriole and Simmerberg were finished in the same position that they were in before the incident. So I don't know if that will be looked at. But now I'm going to hand over to Tiger for the next section.
Well, thank you. So I'll be doing all of the F1 from this week. Sorry. Starting off with last weekend's weekend league, which has just started, and this is the weekend league where we were in Monza for just a pre-season race. So I'm just going to do a little short summary for you of just how the race went. And yeah, this is the sort of a brand new league, and Gavra, they pay to get in. It's almost like a donation to go towards the Gavra, and for them setting up all of this stuff and doing a fantastic job for all of us. So just starting off with simply the winner of that race, he actually had a brilliant qualifying session, absolute underscore 11 qualified on pole, and then won the race after there was a collision in the Ascari. So Ascari claiming another victim again, which caused a safety car, which then everyone came into the pits of soft tyres. And usually Doku didn't, which led to him having a little bit of an incident. But unfortunate for him, but Quazboy had a brilliant race. Came from 13th on the grid to finish 3rd in the end. After he started on the mediums, went to the softs, so brilliant from him. And then there was a little incident just finally before the safety car restarted between Jetsi and Gross Toto. I believe that's how you say his name. Both of those cars got quite damaged just after the safety car restarted, but it looked like a clear swipe from Jetsi and the McLaren. But if you want to go watch that full race, it's over on the Gavra Racing YouTube channel. But yeah, it's just a short summary anyway. It was just a pre-season race, and the full season will be starting this weekend. And on to the next section is the Golden Crown. So the Golden Crown is another brand new series where drivers have to work in teams of 5 to fight for their leagues, to find out which league is the best league in Gavra Racing. And it was quite a show, wouldn't you guys agree?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to see people who have been fighting against each other in their own respective leagues actually having to come together and work together. So, if you don't have a great relationship with your championship rival, it's going to be a bit awkward.
Yeah, definitely. It was interesting to see the drivers like working together, especially since some of them, like the likes of you and Shankster too, saying, and other drivers as well, like Mares and Pope, who had been battling so much in their individual leagues, coming together to work as like a team. It was very interesting to see. But let's talk about the big news firstly, as the Academy team got an LLP2, which means the whole Academy team, not just the one driver, the whole Academy team has to serve an LLP2, which means they cannot qualify until 10 minutes left in the qualifying session. So we saw some interesting incidents from the Academy team. There was a bit of an incident with between one of the Academy drivers, I believe it was Pope Mares and Atom Grin. I believe RC8 jumped both of the starts, which is interesting as well. But yeah, it'd be interesting. But how do you think this will impact the Academy team, and how will all the teams be looking at having cleaner in the future races? So we'll start with you, X Natty.
This, I think, with the Academy having the LLP2, it could potentially knock their confidence down a little bit. Obviously, they might be, hopefully they're going to be thinking about being a bit cleaner in the next race. But yeah, I think all drivers will be, everyone's going to be aware of, everyone is aware of the penalty system, so they're going to do their best to keep it clean, because it'll be quite tough to be in a situation where one driver causes the whole team to get that penalty. So I reckon these drivers will try and keep it clean for the next race, and yeah, that's.
Definitely. Do you think that might affect the other teams in terms of, might be a little bit of a warning to them in terms of keeping it clean, maybe, so that their whole team doesn't get a penalty?
Yeah, I think when you have to work as much as a unit in the Golden Crown series, which is completely unique from all the other races where you're only really racing against your one other teammate, and you're going for the constructors as well as the drivers. I think they just need to keep in mind that if one person messes up, it affects everybody. So I think going forward, that might make them potentially a little bit more cautious. Well, hopefully anyway, for the rest of us. As yeah, I feel like we at the Premier team have quite a good understanding of what we all need to do to get the job done, and hopefully we can get it done. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So Yeah, so interesting to see how all the teamwork happens there. But yeah, speaking of teamwork, we saw a lot of that happening during the race. Cars then in each other's by. DRS becoming almost a catch-up button, really, as teams of two were usually around the track helping each other out with DRS and slipstream. However, the freshman team seemed to be their own worst enemy during that race. I believe you got a good view of what was happening with that there, Toussaint.
Yeah, so Shankster and myself, we were both coming back through the field after qualifying, in 9th and 11th, I think it was. But yeah, so we had a difficult quali, and we were coming through the field, but we just got stuck behind the freshman team, more or less. They were battling each other, they were battling with each other really hard, which I mean, it proved a detriment to them, really. They were forcing each other off the track. They were causing incidents with each other, stuff like that. And I mean, even though that they got 3 cars in the top 10, and we did as well, we had, many more points than they did at the end of the first race. In the second race, we dropped the ball a little bit, but I think the freshman team moving forward need to maybe sort out some rules of engagement between the cars that they have in the race. And yeah, it was a bit too argy-bargy for teammates, I think, in the Golden Crown.
Definitely, yeah. It's interesting to see on sort of how they worked there, and I'm not sure how much planning and how much strategy they've done between themselves. But yeah, so a driver who had a brilliant race here, Gran, who was representing the Super League, had an outstanding both of the races, the feature race and the sprint race. And the first race, he had a little bit of a spin towards the end, which he actually still managed to catch up to. I believe, was it you, Toussaint? Was it you, or was it someone else? Who was
Yeah,
it?
he spun at the end. He spun near the end of the feature race and managed to catch up to me on the soft tires and get
Yeah,
past.
he had a lot
Yeah.
quicker tires, didn't he? But yeah,
He
he
was also
managed
too
to.
quick in general.
Yeah,
He was-
he was very very quick, and he managed to win that race. And in the second in the sprint race, had a collision on lap 2, causing him to climb from the back of the field, making quite a few very good overtakes, and getting third in the end. An outstanding performance from him. Wouldn't you agree, Xnady?
Yeah, to spin and then to come back through the field and finish third is quite remarkable. But he's really quick and obviously proved himself a contender for this Golden Crown series. But similar in the first race, when he spun towards the end, he had the pace and the tyres to find the time back that he lost. And also in the second race, I believe he pitted early, so he was able to get the undercut on quite a few of the drivers who had overtaken him because of his little spin. But so yeah, it's a remarkable drive for him to come back through the field like that.
Definitely, it was. And Toussaint, we saw you had a little battle with Pope during the sprint race, and it was a very good move from you in the S's. Can you explain exactly what happened?
Yeah, so I was behind Pope. I was actually looking forward to battling him, seeing what the academy boys are made of a little bit. And when he pitted before me, I messed up on my in lap, which meant I came out quite a ways behind him. I was able to catch up, and from his driving, what I could see was he wasn't able to turn into the corners, I think, as early as he would have liked. So he's missing a lot of the apexes. So I knew from that point on, I think he had less or very little downforce on the front end of the car. So I could have got him probably in most of the corners, but potentially not down the straight. So coming on from lap 8 to lap 9, I had the DRS down both straights, and then going up the hill towards turn 3. He defended to the inside. I went to the outside. I broke early because I knew he would go wide, and I could try and get the cut back into turn 5. I think it is 5 and 6. And then going into turn 5, I was able to brake later than him on the first part of the S's, and then just drive around the outside to turn 6, coming up towards the hairpin. I mean, we're side by side for a little bit of a lap coming up into the final sector. The battle did actually continue on towards lap 10, but I did manage to just edge him out at the first corner at the beginning of lap 10. But yeah, it was a really fun battle to have with the runner-up in the Academy Series, and hopefully he'll be, moving up to the Super League next year so we can have more of those battles because he's a very quick driver.
Definitely, it was very, very quick, and him and Mares both bringing home some big points for the Academy League. And Nanny, we saw you have a battle for a few laps in the first race, the feature race with Met Boy, an intense battle back and forth between you two drivers. Could you explain the battle, and could you explain to us how intense that battle was?
Yeah, it was. Well, we were both. I think we'd both. I'd say for myself and Met Boy, we were quite kind of struggling a little bit on our worn hards because I think we both started on mediums and went for the one stop onto hard. So it was quite hard not to lose the rear on some of the exits of corners. But the DRS and the slipstream round Bahrain is really quite powerful. And whenever one of us would overtake each other, we'd just get each other back on the slipstream with the DRS into the next corner. So it was really fun, and it's really competitive, especially with battling with the likes of Met Boy in the Super League. But yeah, I just like to say, Met Boy, if you are watching, thank you. And I do apologise if there was contact. I had a bit of lag, but that didn't stop us from having a good battle. And I believe towards the end of our battle, with I think 2 or 3 laps to go, can't remember who. I think it was Mares and one of the freshman guys was able to catch up to our battle. So it was fun to have a 4-way battle for, I think it was 5th place in the end, with 2 laps to go and battling with one person from each league. Was fun and competitive, so it's good to see that these drivers are quick and that they do like a bit of side by side racing.
Definitely, and it was interesting to see in terms of the full race, drivers from different leagues racing against each other. I'd always wanted to see the academy and freshman boys go up against the likes of Toussaint Shankster and Attengren, and we got to see it in that race. It was very, very good. But after all of that, the Super League came out on top by 4 points over the Premier Series. So I can imagine you two are going to be a little bit annoyed with that result, but I'm sure you'll bounce back next week. And so yeah, it's going to be an interesting one going into the next week's race in Baku. But that's all from me for the F1 stuff. I'll hand back over to the main man, Tucson 0208, for the final section where we're going to be having an interview with Duke, I believe.
Thank you very much, Tiger and Xnati. You both did great jobs, as always. Thank you for doing that. Right now, I'm going to go into the part you've all been waiting for. So, for all of you fans part of the Dutch invasion here at Gavra Racing, I'm going to be a bit disappointed we don't have another Dutch driver on for you this week. But we do have the cool guy. He's organising even the GT Sport stuff. It is Duke SL64. Hi, mate. Sorry for the long wait. How are you doing?
Sorry. I my headset. Yeah, I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me.
No problem. We're looking forward to doing this interview for a while. So, for our listeners who don't know who you are that well, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so I go by the name Duke whenever Jukebox is not around. SL64, and I race the green Mercedes AMG with the coffee break logos all over it.
So is that coffee break? Is that like a personal sponsor for you, or is it a thing that you just made up?
No, that's a personal sponsor for me. That's an actual company.
Oh right, okay. You've got that kind of money in Gavra Racing already. That's actually mad. All right, okay. So we'll get on to your real world racing stuff, I think, at the end of the interview. But I'm going to hand over to Tiger now.
So yeah, for the first question here, what would you say is your favorite track on GT Sport and why?
I think every time we go to Le Mans, I think Danes especially gets really hyped because of Tom Christensen and all the success he has. So I would definitely say Circuit de la Sarthe is a favorite.
Yeah, it's definitely not because you beat me there, is it? As an ex,
I definitely know what my favorite track is on GT Sports. So but we'll leave that for another day.
Well-known fact.
As an ex, I'm going to pass the baton on to you.
So speaking of which, you're currently the championship leader in the GT Sport Championship. How much pressure do you feel going into each race now?
Well, the first race I was shaking. I was sweating a lot. That was the most nervous race at the Nürburgring. And then ever since Spa, I have that almost the same amount of nervosity going into each race, but it's not too bad.
Making up new words left, right, and centre. So I'm gonna go straight into the next question. So you are as you just said, you are the leading driver in the GT Sport title race right now. So who do you think is your biggest threat to that championship lead at the moment?
Oh, it's this guy. Maybe you've heard of him. His name is Toussaint. Yeah.
Oh, that guy, that dirty driver. The Pastor Maldonado of Gavra Racing, yeah.
Isn't there that guy as well that's going to come crawling up from the bottom of the championship after missing 3 races? Play Dutchy. That'd be a bit of a threat as well.
Well, he is insanely fast, but I think if he joined in the beginning, yeah, maybe him too. But...
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we need to very much nip his progress in the bud. I think in the next race, me and you, Duke, you gotta start winning again.
Well, no pressure then.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna hand over to Xnati now.
So the last race in Monza was quite a thrilling race, actually. Could you give us your personal highlights from that race?
Personal highlight would be 3 wide down the start-finish straight.
Really, same.
Yeah, actually, that was really awesome. I went to a third person on the car so I could see everything because it just looked so cool. This is great.
I think I remember that started from when I think you went a bit right at the parabolic and I kind of nudged into you a tiny bit and I was able to sorry about that. I was able to just get a little bit more of a line on the inside, but I saw Dutchy coming and I was like, are we actually gonna go 3 right into the curve? I was like, actually we're doing this now apparently, and I was like, I'm not backing out of this one then because I want to win this particular battle. And fortunately, it didn't end in a massive ball of fire and pain.
Somehow it didn't.
Unluckily for me, though, behind. I would have voted for something to happen.
You must have sitting there like, oh my Jesus, this is gonna go up in a box.
I was at the end of the straight, and you guys were at the other end. I was like, oh god, so this isn't gonna end well. I just saw 3 cars just go off into the distance and around the corner. I went, what carnage am I about to drive into?
I would have loved an inner dialogue from you, Tiger. Just do GT Sport, does it have fire in this game? Maybe fire in the smoke. Maybe
just to see a smoke rising up from over the trees. Just
all right. So as well as racing in the GT Sport Championship, you're also organizing it, and I believe you're an admin for it as well. So how are you finding that side of things here at Gavra?
Yeah, it's actually really easy doing all this work.
Sorry, admins.
No, but the other admins. I'm gonna get the shit kicked out of me right now. No, but in the terms that I came to Gavra with the idea, and he was actually really, really nice about it. And he was just, hey, if you have an idea or you have a plan, go do it. And it was really easy to get to do what I wanted to do. In terms of actually running it with that's mostly people, getting good, reliable people in the championship. That's the hardest one.
Yeah, definitely. I think that once we have that nailed down, it should be some really good. Well, we've had some really good races so far. Yeah. But I'm going to hand over to Xnati for the next question. Let's Tiger. You have.
I was going to say a bit. I mean, as soon as I heard about the GT Sport Championship, I was straight in because I'd wanted it to happen as well. So I was happy you jumped in there, Duke, and took over.
All right, nice one. So we send our sentiments to Duke. So I'm going to hand over to Xnati now for the next question.
So if you have any, what are your future plans for the GT Sport Championship going forward? And could we see maybe small changes before the end of the current season to spice up the racing?
Well, this first season we will not be seeing any changes to the regulations, but I can confirm that I am already working on season 2, and I have already over 8 tracks on the calendar, and I'm slowly working out the amount of tire wear and whether or not we should have, as we learned from Monza, maybe a bit more slipstream because it was actually really difficult to get past each other. So
is Mount Panorama on that?
I cannot confirm nor deny.
Spoiler alert.
I fully believe that one day when Tiger goes to heaven, his eternal pleasure is going to be driving the 2009 Brawn around Mount Panorama.
That will Jensen Button all over again.
that will be his paradise. And so, if you haven't worked out by now, Tiger has a very unhealthy infatuation with the 2009 Brawn Formula One car. As though you did actually have a couple of outings in F1 2019, so that's Ran and Natty's territory with the Renault team in the Premier Series early on in the season, which they didn't appear to go that well for you. Could you explain what exactly happened there, just from your POV?
Yeah, first of all, I was just setting up everything in sort of wheel and PlayStation, all this, and then I forgot to make sure that I had Ethernet. So I ran a lot of Wi-Fi, so I got kicked out left and right and center of a lot of the races. So yeah, that's not really helping. And then at the last race, I couldn't really control the car, and I had an enormous amount of lag. So I pretty much said, no, I can't. I really can't do this. So, and also I was not familiar with the game.
Fair enough. As it was interesting to see you like the difference between like your driving from F1 2019 to GT Sports. So I remember thinking F1 2019, I was like, oh, okay, so he's got some pace when he can turn it on, but like otherwise it's just a bit meh. And then, no offense. And then he got to the first one of the GT Sport. I was like, oh dang, this guy quick. and yeah, so it's been fun to have a lot of battles with you in the GT Sport Championship. Hopefully we can continue that in the future, as I'm going to give it to Xnati now, I think, again. Unless I've been too biased, one of you.
Well, I would just like to add in that you have no idea how many times I've just screamed at my TV because I've seen you right behind me. Just go away now! Leave me alone!
I do that all the time. I get in front of you or like Toussaint, and I'll just see you coming up behind me and be like, please go away. Please, I want this podium. What are you doing?
The first race in Nürburgring I think the last lap where I got my penalty, I really yelled out just swear words in Danish, just and then I looked behind and he got the same. I'm like, oh baby Jesus, there is a gun. Oh, it saved my skin. I really did think so. That this is just pure luck right now.
Oh, well, I mean,
What need to ask the next one, because I haven't asked one since question 2.
Yeah, sure. You go, Tiger. Sorry.
With F1 2020 coming out, is there a possible chance of return to the F1 game or one of our championships for yourself?
Well, probably not. I think I'm gonna stick to Gran Turismo for the time being, but never say never. I would say maybe.
Yeah, fair enough. Apologies to headphone users for last question. I'm sure we've probably deafened about 50% of our fan base right now. As for the final question, so bringing it more towards the real world stuff now. We also understand in your spare time you've been working on a motorcycle, I think it is. So how's that going so far? And instead of that, I think you've been doing some real world stuff before the current global situation.
Yeah, right now I'm rebuilding for all the nerds out there. I'm rebuilding a Yamaha FZR 600, and it's an old bike. It's from the 90s, so carburetors and everything. But I'm doing an engine rebuild at the moment, and I'm going to do all the other suspension components of the motorcycle as well.
Yeah, so you're actually like fully rebuilding it from whatever state you found it in, I guess.
Yeah, actually.
That's pretty cool.
All right, so Duke's doing a little Forza Horizon barn find thing there.
Yeah, actually, it was kind of like that because I got an offer. Some guy I know, he works a lot with those types of motorcycles, and he wrote to me and he were pretty much, hey mate, there's this old motorcycle, you want it? And does it start? Yeah, okay, then send it over. When it's from? It's from Germany. Oh, okay, what can you tell me about it? Nothing. I have no idea where this come from. I have no idea where he kept this. If it's illegal, I have no idea. Do you want it still? Sure, just send it over. And pretty much I got it home and I started to take it apart, and I decided pretty quick that okay, I think I need to rebuild this, and I'm gonna rebuild it into a track bike specifically.
Oh, and so like leading on from that a little bit, so you mentioned your personal sponsor before. So they've been sponsoring like your bike racing, and I think you said you did some Formula 4 stuff. A little bit of
Yeah, I
Formula
did
4?
some. I did a Formula 5
Formula
test.
5.
Yeah, test session.
Mhm.
And I had pretty good luck with that. And then I have entered some races, and that's only 3, but it's still some. Before this seemingly unknown virus going on right now, everything just got halted. So yeah, we are all on standby at the moment.
Yeah, so if I do end up losing the GT Sport Championship to Duke, that's my excuse. He drives in real life. So thanks for that one. But it's been lovely to have you on, Duke. It's been nice to meet you. I think we're going to do some GT Sport practice in a few hours' time, hopefully, like me and you and Tiger in a bit. So hopefully we'll see you then. And it's been great having you on, mate. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right. See ya. As that was Duke SL64, everyone. If you'd like to be involved in the podcast in the same way that he was, please message us on the Gavra Racing Discord, Instagram, or Twitter. We'll put out there'll be links to all of those in the description down below. But anyway, that's going to bring to an end then episode 5 of the Grid Slot. We've been a bit tired running around, a bit scared of the thunder that's going on outside. I think we all need some emotional support right now. As if you would like to see any of the races in full that we have talked about, they'll all be in the Gavra Racing YouTube channel, which this will be uploaded onto, and you'll also be able to check out all of the other stuff we have going on here on the Gavra Racing website. You'll be able to ask us questions for the Q&A, which we didn't do this week, unfortunately, but we are looking to get started up back again. But you'll be able to send your questions in on Discord.
More questions.
We do need more questions desperately. Even if it's just things about Natty's skincare routine, we'll take that as well. But if you do have any questions or comments or how we can improve, leave them in the comments down below. You can message either 3 of us on Discord or use the Gavra Racing Instagram or Twitter, all of which will be linked down below. If you have enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And thank you everyone for listening.